We can get going here. And if anyone, yeah, Jen, right? Cool. Yeah, we can get going. And if anyone else enters in, I'll let them in, but we also will have this recording along with a really great outline from Betsy. But I'm Evan, the Coalition Clubhouse headmistress. I use she, her pronouns. And this is our 5th and final backcountry beta of the season about multi-day trips, both camping and hut. And our speaker is Betsy, who has lots of great info. We've been doing this, I think this is the 3rd season. I don't know why I just blanked on that. Yeah, 3rd season with TREW Gear. And Jess is here from TREW. And so I'll pass it over to you, Jess.
Thanks, Evan. Hey, everybody, I'm Jess from TREW. Like Evan said, we've been doing this for 3 years, mostly because Coalition is awesome and getting in the backcountry is awesome. So we're just, really pumped to be a part of this and be able to learn in this kind of environment is really amazing. And then as far as this particular event, TREW is located in Portland, Oregon, and we have like an extraordinarily long ski season here. I don't know what it's like everywhere else. Like, I'm curious what it's like in Tahoe, but our ski season can go through like August because we have volcanoes that just hold a lot of snow. So we're starting to get into like spring and the time when days are longer and when it's sunnier out and where we can actually like go out on multi-day trips now. I mean, I guess you can do it any time of year, but like, spring is always a nicer time to do it because it's bluebird days and just nicer out. So really excited to learn from you, Betsy, and get into it.
Cool. Thanks, Jess. Yeah, I'm also excited about learning about how to get into multi-day like camping stuff, because that doesn't appeal to me necessarily in the depths of winter, more so that hut trip. So Betsy here is going to be our speaker, and she is a Coalition Snow Ambassador. But I'm going to pass it over to you, Betsy, if you want to introduce yourself to the group.
Yeah, I am Betsy Perrier. I use she, her, they, them pronouns, and I am currently based out of Southwest Montana. And yeah, I am an adaptive athlete, and I am currently planning the first adaptive ski traverse of the Wind River Range, and that'll be happening this May, hopefully.
You're so cool.
Oh,
that's awesome. It's so cool. Yeah, cool. Well, let's get into it. So first off, there's a couple different ways of doing multi-day trips, right? So if you want to, could you talk to us a little bit about like what those different trips look like?
All right. So I kind of grouped them into 4 main categories I thought would be sort of handy. The first one is kind of like of course, the hut cabin kind of style trip. You could bring more food, more like luxury camp items, like larger stoves, pots and pans, comfier bedding, that kind of stuff. You might take a snowmobile into them too. That's like a big difference with that kind of multi-day adventure. And then you have like the objective type of ski trip where you're going out to go ski like a specific thing, like a couloir or a specific mountain or something somewhere. That might take like a couple days to get there and back again, or just like even an overnight trip, depending on how far back you're going to ski your objective. And then base camp style missions. So you're going out to one area, but you're going to like maybe attempt to ski multiple peaks or routes in that same area. So you're going to set up like a little base camp and then go out and try to hit multiple things over multiple days or whatnot from there. A little bit different than an objective. It's a little longer, more stuff, And then the ski traverse. So you're heading out to cross a mountain range or section of a range. You're like maybe caching food or gear along different sections of the route. You might be hauling a sled. You might be carrying everything you need in a big backpack or in both a sled and a backpack. It might take a bunch of days, even weeks maybe. You might be going like hut to hut on your trip. So you might be sleeping overnight in various huts instead of camping in a tent overnight there. And kind of like if you follow Cody Townsend's 50 project, he did a Bugs to Rogers traverse on that. And that's a pretty good example of like a very basic, straightforward kind of ski traverse.
Well, how would one want to think about like how to choose, hut trip, traverse, objective? Like, what are some of the things that go into thinking about which one might be the best option to do, depending on where you're at in your multi-day?
Yeah, so in some ways, I think it depends maybe a bit on the like area or region you're in. Like some places have lots of huts, so it's kind of easy to like kind of schedule a trip and make a hut to hut kind of trip. And some places there's nothing out there but wilderness, so you have to do winter camping. And then, yeah, some places like for an objective, like maybe you've seen like a mountain on the ski lift far away and you're like, oh, that looks really fucking cool. Like I gotta get back in there. So you base a trip on something you see while you're outside already or while you're driving or something. I've done that a lot. And then maybe something that inspires you that you read about, and then you're like, dang, I have to figure out what's so cool about there. I got to get back there. That's how I've based a couple of my overnight trips too. And then let's see. Yeah. So
when you say, like sled or snowmobile, so with like a hut trip or also with a traverse, I guess, sorry, I'm going to admit someone in here, or with a hut trip. So you could be like pulling a sled, right, with like gear on top of it, or a snowmobile that would bring things in. And that would be more for like a hut trip and a traverse, or you are also doing that for your objective.
Yeah. If you got a snowmobile to help with your objective mission, I mean, that just makes it a lot easier. You don't have to carry the weight, the sled does the whole thing. That's always really nice. But yeah, and then yeah, so like with a sled, probably maybe not a hut to hut trip, depending on the distance, because the huts usually sometimes have like stoves and some sort of bedding and whatnot, so you don't kind of have to bring all your homely accoutrements and like domestic nighttime kind of stuff, because the huts usually have something like that.
Got it.
But yeah, definitely like traverse stuff, maybe having a sled or a lot of food or fuel caches and that sort of thing would be helpful. Yeah.
So definitely those are a lot more involved than a hut trip.
I think so overall, depending on what hut you go to and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, do you want to get into a little bit more of how you chose, like, I mean, we can use your example as well, but like, once you decided you wanted to do a traverse, right? And so you're considering like that route and how long it is and some of those considerations that you need to do. And I mean, that's the same with a hut trip as well, I guess. You pick a hut that you're trying to get to and you need to consider how far it is and looking at maps and things like that.
Yeah, so yeah, depending on like your ability level, your capability, your fitness level will really help you determine how long or how big of a trip you can go on. And like your goal, your experience level and whatnot helps. The bigger your goal is, the more time you'll need to set aside to plan and train and prepare for it, of course. And then what helped me a lot planning my route and figuring out what I wanted to do is kind of looking at the map and kind of gauging really roughly, because it's just like sort of planning at first, like the daily vert and elevation gain and loss in your route during the day. So you can kind of plan like, oh, this is gonna, like I thought this was gonna be like a 3-day trip. It's gonna be more like a week-long trip with the terrain. And looking at the map in depth to kind of help gauge the enormity of your route will help you kind of prepare for it a lot more, I think.
So if you're just getting into sort of either a hut trip or thinking about a traverse, if you're generally newer to it, you want to pick something maybe shorter, right? And then if you were to say like, okay, I want to be from point A to point B, how did you decide how many miles a day you were going to do to figure out like how many days it's going to be?
Yeah, so to figure out how many miles a day I was going to do to figure out the length and whatnot, I've been trading about 5 to 7 days a week, depending on what we're doing. And I've been going on almost daily ski tours. And from there, I've been able to gauge like roughly the average distance I can get in a certain amount of time over like different types of terrain and stuff, getting nerdy with the statistics. And I was able to kind of gauge like, oh, I can do this much, like cover this much distance in this much time. So over this many days, I can roughly do this much distance. And then of course, based on the map that you're looking at too.
And what did you use for mapping resources to look at your route?
Yeah, I used a few of them. Onyx was actually the most helpful out of all of the mapping resources I used. I used Onyx Backcountry because that's what I have at the time, but I like Onyx Hunt better for backcountry planning, to be honest. I think it's a little bit more resourceful. They haven't quite developed the backcountry Onyx app all the way yet, I think, but you can look at slope angle shading, trail slope shading, which will really help if you're kind of roughly following an already established trail. It'll tell you how steep it is on the map. And that'll kind of help you see like, oh, how steep the terrain is you'll be going up maybe. Same with slope angle shading and slope aspect. That's kind of helpful. The topo setting on the maps, of course. And then I also used CalTopo and Gaia. Those are the traditional ones, whatever. And those are pretty helpful, but the maps I've realized aren't as detailed as the maps on Onyx. So
you can show, do you want me to pull up your route right now? I don't know which mapping.
I used Onyx for the
one?
pictures I sent you. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen and pull that up so that there's sort of a visual.
Yeah, good job.
And you could just sort of talk about also your route a little bit from that. And also all the resources of like the mapping and stuff, that's going to be in our follow-up doc also, just so everyone knows, because there's a lot of great mapping resources on Betsy's outline here.
I made way too many notes. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Right. This is a dense topic of multi-day trip planning. And we're going to try to do a nice overview.
I could not figure out how to fit it all in one little talk, but yeah.
I'm trying to share my screen, so give me one moment. What? Okay. All right, can everyone see my screen? Yes, cool. Yeah, so this is Betsy's route, pretty badass.
Yeah, so I'm starting up kind of not by lander. I'm starting on the left side of the screen, on the opposite side of the temperature little thing and stuff in the corner. And to help me plan this route, I used Gaia and CalTopo, and I found routes that people had either planned on there or already completed maybe during the summer. There aren't a lot of winter traverse beta for ski traversing the Wind River Range, so it was kind of hard to find good info. So I got a little sneaky with it, and you can export and import people's map lines from different websites into your own stuff. And that helped me figure out like, oh, this area, people have gone there before, so it's safe for me to travel too, probably, because it's a well-traveled, established kind of area, etc. And then I used, excuse me, I used the 3D mode that Onyx has. That's pretty detailed as far as like weird 3D map type things go. And that helps you when you have like the slope angle shading and the topo map on to actually get a good gauge of how steep certain sections of terrain you want to cross is. So you can figure out like, oh, that actually looks a lot sketchier in 3D mode and it doesn't than it does top down. Like, yeah, I don't want to be there. I'll plan my route around that area. And that was really helpful for me. And then,
right. So there's sort of a lot of considerations on your route of not only looking at like, okay, here's my point A and my point B, because you're starting, what was it, in Lander?
We are starting kind of on the other side by the Green River Lakes area. It's not really by a town, but yeah.
And then the end is what town?
By Lander on the
Oh, it is.
far right side.
Okay. Yeah. And it's how many miles? 89?
It is between 89 and 100 plus, depending on the side objectives we try to ski.
Right. So not only are you needing to consider like your point A and point B, and then also like where that route goes, how it travels on avalanche terrain, slope, angle, side objectives that you might be trying to do. And so that's where some of those mapping things come in handy of you being able to see it 3D. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of helped. So I've been into the Wind River Range to ski a few things before, but I've never been to most of the range. So that was kind of helpful getting a gauge for like how steep some of the granite walls are we had to ski underneath and that kind of thing, because I haven't been there before. So that kind of helped get like a really bad but helpful kind of image in my head of the terrain around there. And then you can see on the map, I have, it's a little bit zoomed out, so it's hard to tell, but in yellow, I have detours and alternate routes. And then the yellow waypoints, I marked very steep sections. So sections I'll probably have to haul the sled on ropes for, and sections I'll want to pay attention to, because it'll be a little funky to do with my adaptive self. And then I marked safe campsites in black on there that you can see. And that way I'll know ahead of time, and I'll have them marked on my paper maps too. Like, these campsites are not in avalanche terrain. If I roll up here at night, I won't have to like try with my headlamp to like awkwardly look around and see if there's any avalanche danger near where we would put the tents.
Right. So you've marked out all your campsites, and then specifically all the safe ones too, because you're not wanting to camp necessarily in a avalanche path.
Anything else I consider with campsites? Yeah, so of course, following LNT principles like we like to do, away from water, away from like established trails, I like to try to do as well, to, even though there won't be many people back there, when we're back there, it's nice to kind of stay out of the way, stay away from the water sources, like the bodies of water, lakes, ponds, etc. And then Avi danger was the big one. We're like, we can melt snow for water. We don't need to be excuse me, near bodies of water, as long as we can have snow to melt, which will be abundant. So that'll be handy. And then we considered, excuse me, like the next day starting out, will there be like a crazy steep hill climb we'll have to do first thing, or like what's gonna suck the next day that we would either want to get it over with the night before and try to just cover that terrain, or cover it fresh in the morning. That was a big thought about choosing campsites.
Let's see, back to like the melting water for, or melting snow for water. This is, how did you have to think, do you have to pack in and pack out your poop?
Yes, we are going to do the best we can to do that, because that's the best and most responsible thing to do. And at least it'll be really, really cold out, so it won't be that pungent. That'll be helpful. It's depending, if you're in some areas, the LNT organization says it can be okay to leave your poop in the nature as long as you deal with it the best you can. But of course, we like to try to not do that, to be kind to the nature, so we can keep coming back and not have to step over everybody's mess. Yeah.
Right. So I guess that's something to consider too, because at a hut, you have an outhouse, you know?
Yeah, that's
toilet paper. And so I'm really feeling the sticking with hut trips.
Yeah, at least snow, if it's good snow, you can wipe with it too. What's up?
Oh,
it's savage, but it's like a bidet, but different. Totally.
Oh, it's just like a bidet.
That was savage. I apologize.
I want to see a reel about how you make a bidet while you're doing your 100
You make
miles
a loose
reverse.
snowman, then you have all the wiping supplies you need. It's very handy. But yeah, that the bathroom situation is another thing to think about when planning a campsite. If you need to use the bathroom, are there maybe other campers around that might see you in the headlamp light at night? That's been a situation that I didn't think about once before. So yeah, that's a good point.
And you're planning to do this though unsupported though, and like you're pretty much out there alone, correct?
Yeah, we will be out there alone the whole time. We're not crossing any roads. We're not intersecting any civilized places. Cool. And we might not even see anybody else out there the whole time. Maybe not. So that'll be a thing.
Right. Cool. So basically we have, picking your objective, hut trip, etc., looking at mileage, considering your fitness level and maybe how much is actually doable, or, like hut trips are a little bit more accessible because you can snowshoe in, you can cross country in, and some of the other ones get kind of increasingly, you're going to need more and more gear to do.
That's a good point.
And then once you kind of have that, you're thinking about your mapping, correct? And then from there, are you considering like what exactly you're bringing and some of the layers? I feel like layers is a thing that I can constantly never, ever nail down, even if I'm somewhere where it's a resort, So
I feel that.
So maybe can we talk a little bit about like gear / clothes and
oh wait, did we just get a question?
Yes, we did. Any specifics that influence the overall direction of your route? That's good.
Yeah. So I chose my route because this really cool guy, Forrest McCarthy, ski traversed in 1994 from Lander all the way up and over to Jackson Hole. And I looked at his route that he posted on his website, and that thing trended uphill the whole freaking time. So I was like, I'm going to see about doing it the opposite way. So my route going north to south to Lander instead of south from Lander to north all trends in the downhill direction. The most vert I gain is like getting up into the mountains, and then it just slowly kind of tapers off as I go. And that's also a good thing to think about, probably, is the direction. Like, oh, is there going to be more downhill that I can easily ski with less effort one way? Or would I rather get some good quad work and go uphill for the majority of the time?
Like, no, downhill.
Yeah, that's what I was feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions about specifics about route or mapping for Betsy?
I think I gave you a picture that showed an example of where I put my campsites, and like it kind of had an example of the 3D mapping. Maybe we could whip that out really quick.
Yes, give me one moment.
Uh-huh.
I think it's the one that is which campsites look less sketchy.
I think so, yeah.
I think it's that one. All right, share screen. All right.
Yeah, so this is what it looks like on the map with the 3D mode with the slope angle shading and the topo lines up. I guess this is a good example. So you can see I've marked a few different spots, and the one on the far right you can see is kind of in between. It's at the bottom of a really steep purple and red slope. Purple is the steepest color it will go. And maybe camping there would be a little sketchy. There might be some snowfall. The middle campsite you can see is less sketchy. It is at the bottom still of that area, but you're not in as much of like a constricted zone. If there was like a big avalanche or something, you wouldn't get carried down far like you would that far right one. You might get carried over that slope or something sketchy. Who knows? Avalanches, they're fun. And then that back one way in the back there is probably the safest area to camp in out of those 3 spots. It's the most open. The topo lines are the most spaced out. And it's the farthest away from the sketchy purple that we can be within that area. And you can see, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, is this one on onyx too?
Onyx, yeah.
Onyx. Okay, cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no worries. But yeah, you can see that that's kind of a good example of kind of where to choose campsites, and you kind of a mapping example of how I chose my final route. That light color in the red is the final route, and Forrest McCarthy's route, that silly guy, took that purpley black line that was all the way at the top. But since he was, yeah, we're not sure why he chose that, but I chose an area and a way to approach into the route that was a little less risky business and had better camping opportunities. So there's that.
Absolutely. I'm like, why up and over that? Also, you have to cross over that super steep part. No, thank you.
Hopefully the map data was wrong, but who knows with that one.
Cool. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, but this is a really good visual of where you might not want to camp and where it could be a better camping spot. In general, camping at I don't know what the correct term would be, not necessarily a basin, but a basin or a valley.
Yeah, camping somewhere.
Valley.
Yeah, where the snow might not fall upon you at night. Yeah, good stuff.
Out of the steep.
Yeah, out of the steeps, exactly.
That's
and we'll be doing layers.
Yeah, let's get into some like clothing, equipment considerations, like, because especially again, like hut trip, you can bring all the things if you're carrying a sled or if you're snowmobiling, but doing a traverse or an objective, like you're carrying everything, whether you're pulling it with a sled or if it's on your back, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so once I planned out my route, I could plan better for clothing after that because I had a gauge on the distance, how many nights I might be out for, all that stuff, what I'm actually doing, what I'm actually skiing. And so based off of how many days you'll be out for, and maybe add an extra day or two thrown in for storms or bad weather that might keep you in camp longer if you're going on a more committing trip or not sure what the weather is going to be like during your trip. You can plan your outfits out depending if you're hauling a sled, like Evan said, or carrying a backpack. You can bring more or less base layers and extra clothes. Of course, I like to have the wool base layers because you can wear them more than other materials because they're antimicrobial goodness. And yeah, stay away from cotton, guys. We don't do cotton. Like for me personally, like as a personal request, just don't bring the cotton unless you're going to sleep in it. PJs are acceptable. We'll do PJs. And then, of course, depending on the weather, route length, and how much you sweat, that's a big one. And how much weight you're willing to manage and carry, and how comfortable you are with being a bit dirty. You can also gauge how many base layer pairs you'll need. Like maybe a pair every day, every third day, maybe every other day. And then I like to bring 1 or 2 pajama outfits based on how long I'm going to be out for. I like to keep these as clean and separate from my active wear as I can because I like to be comfy at night. I bring socks specifically for sleeping. Don't ski in your bedtime socks because you don't want to have crusty, sweaty socks on when you're trying to be comfy in a tent in a weird place at night, which is going to be uncomfortable. We all know it. I'm saying it. It's not comfy. And then let's see, depending on the length of your trip, you might run out of clean layers to use as PJs. But yeah, that's just one of those things, like you're out there to get dirty and have fun. So a little bit of dirt, that's gonna be okay. And then, yeah, for my active wear socks, always bring extras, like we all probably do sometimes. I have a really fun sweaty foot problem, so always having extra socks is really smart when you're wearing the same pair of boots every day, day after day for a few days. And then underwear was a huge thing I had to figure out for my traverses, being one of those fun humans that has to wear underwear often. So some people don't bring underwear, which saves weight, but can also dirty your base layers more quickly. So they might not be as re-wearable if you make some messes with your stuff. I use lightweight merino underwear. I think I have icebreakers, and those don't seem to chafe or cause sweaty problems. And I want to say the antimicrobial stuff might be nice for that too. I don't know. But that's what I've found so far is the best for me. I have sensitive bits, and here's my multi-day underwear method. Ooh, I never thought to use a cream like that, Jen. That's a good idea. Dang. But okay, before I forget. So I put on a fresh pair of underwear before bed, wear it to bed, and then wear it all the next day. Jen, you're cracking me up. Wear it all the next day, and then put on another fresh pair that night for like fresh nighttime underwear, and wear that all the next day. So it's not like the super most hygienic thing, but it's as clean as you're probably gonna get in the backcountry. If you're a person with boobs that need to be contained, make sure to bring bras that will not chafe your armpits or your underboob, or where your backpack strap and bra strap kind of collide on your shoulders. Holy crap. Maybe go out and do some good long, gnarly tours to just like really test those bras. Oh my God, that's such a problem.
How many? I was gonna say, like, with that, because I'm a sweaty person too, also like a huge boobed person, and you're not gonna bring, I mean, and I guess this with underwear, you can bring like multiple new pairs, but like with bras, what's your strategy with that?
I am not one of those boob full people, so I usually bring one bra that I'll wear until it's just really stinky and pungent and nasty, until I just don't want to deal with it anymore. And then I'll switch into another one. Might have two. I'll switch into the other one and maybe just wear that until I can't deal with it, and hopefully the trip's over. If not, I'll try to keep one if I need extra insulation at night as a pajama bra, because I get cold. There's not a lot going on for insulation there. And yeah, but to be honest, I don't have as much bra backcountry knowledge in that way. But yeah,
so
then
got the bits taken care of though, so that's good.
Yeah, right. That's the most important part. And you can at least wash your underwear kind of in camp, more or less. It's kind of easy to wash a pair of undies and then hang them on the outside of your pack to dry during the day. So if you need to do that, it's not the nastiest thing to do. I like to also bring a sack, like a ultralight sack kind of thing for dirty clothes, so you can keep your fresh stuff separate, because there's nothing better when you're feeling disgusting than putting on fresh clothes and feeling slightly less disgusting.
So what other, so we got kind of your base layers, and I'm like, what, I guess, like, what are the main other layers that you need to think about taking? You know, like because also like weight and lightness, like you're bringing your base layers, and then I'm assuming your ski stuff, and then like a puffy or something.
Yeah, I like to have a good warm ass layer for stationary times. Kind of like if you're on a regular ski tour, it's kind of nice to have that transition puffy or something to throw on. For multi-day trips, I like to have one puffy and just have it be like the lightest, warmest fucking puffy I can find. Of course, packability with puffies is a thing, but they're getting more squishy and packable nowadays. So that's been kind of helpful with planning trips. So I like to have that one big puffy to wear for stationary times, like during camp, while I'm eating lunch, while somebody's having a bathroom moment, we have to be stopped, you know, puffy time. And then a shell that fits over your puffy, I think, is smarter overall. So then it will be baggier, but then you'll be warmer while you're stationary to have the shell over the puffy. And then just like with regular skiing and ski tours, having layers that keep you protected but are still breathable for active wear. And then having layers that keep you protected and maybe be a little less breathable in case of like storms or super crappy weather, but hopefully your shell and your puffy will do that just fine. You won't need to bring like a bunch of different layers for a bunch of different things. And since we're all a bunch of ski savvy people, I figured we kind of have a good gauge on like overall layering for outdoors.
I feel like we can also we could talk about layers forever.
Yeah.
Jen put a question here, which I feel like goes nice into our next section about some other equipment. But do you bring a bits kit? I'm assuming that's about taking care of your bits, which also kind of goes into like hygiene. What are some of the other like equipment essential things that you're bringing with you and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I have a cooler cloth. I love it. I use it all the time. It's the best. That's like basically the bits kit 101, but overall I have some sort of, and this is something I have in my notes that you guys can look over later if you'd like, period product type deals. I have cooler cloth, piss cloth, the pee cloth, the antimicrobial cloth of sent from above to help us all. I love them. I'm obsessed. They're amazing. Anyways, I love those. I have that. I have something to deal with unexpected periods since mine seem to come whenever the frick they please. So I usually have the most outdoor overnight trip savvy thing is one of the period menstrual cup type guys. Those are the least messy and most lightweight things to carry. If you want to carry tampons or pads or one of those like single-use things, that means you just have to pack it out with you. And maybe you don't want to deal with that. Maybe you're good with it. I can't really reach down there, so I still haven't really figured out the best method for that. Thank goodness I have a partner that's willing to assist me in those very friendly ways. But yeah. I also make sure to have some sort of like a backup wet wipe. Sometimes you can get dehydrated wet wipes that you can like just pour a little bit of water on and then they're good to go if you need to like do extra cleaning, that sort of thing. Period underwear can be really cool if you can find a brand that doesn't chafe you, but then you might have to clean it or just bag it up for after, which is a whole other fun thing to deal with. Yeah, my kit isn't the most thought out for the bits right now.
But like wipes, something if you have an unexpected period. I guess also that kind of goes along with like underwear, and your cooler cloth, right? Those are kind of the things that you bring along.
Yeah. Yep, those are the basics, at least with us menstruation havers, having emergency backup stuff that will add up in the weight, but you might need it is good to have.
Yeah. What are some of the other equipment pieces you're bringing along with you and like first aid kit and things like that?
Yeah, I have a really good list of this in the notes. So repair kit.
We'll share as well. We're going to share like the full extent of your list because it is extensive.
10
just talk about a little
add more. I could add so much more. It's so bad. Oh my goodness. Okay. Repair kits for basically all of your essential gear. Like, who knows what could go wrong? Just bring that extra shit. So maybe an extra toe piece if you have tech bindings for like very long committed, yes, nerding out on gear is the best. For long committing trips, having an extra toe piece for your tech bindings might be good. Extra glue for those too, maybe. If you are a split boarder, you lucky guys. Ladders, ratchets, straps, extra screws for your bindings is something I used to have a big problem with. And then maybe some Titan straps or Volley straps with some baling wire kind of rolled up is always nice. It's basically backcountry duct tape that doesn't freeze. Baling wire is the best. For your skins, maybe some backup clips having a skin scraper for that sticky wet snow if you're going out maybe in the springish, winter, springtime, that sort of stuff. If you're hauling a sled repair kit, and those will vary by which sleds you have, but if your sled breaks down in the backcountry, it's the worst. Yeah, it's shitty. And then, of course, patches for your layers and tent could be smart depending on the length of your trip. And then, let's see, having a repair kit for your stove might be a good idea depending on your mission and how long it is. Because if your stove breaks down, you might not have any clean water to drink or be able to melt water for your meals if you have dehydrated or freeze-dried meals. And then you're exiting real fast. It'll be good. And then depending on the trip, you might need some technical gear. For me, I'm gonna have to bring a rope on my trip because we'll have to be crossing technical terrain with our sleds. So we're gonna be hauling our sleds up and over steep stuff and across glaciers. So having like a glacier rope or a 6mm cord for hauling and lowering and dealing with steep terrain isn't a bad idea. 6mm cords also weigh less than regular rope and are usually just as kind of okay. Anchor cords for anchors, depending on your terrain. Pickets for lowering your sleds and stuff. Maybe if you have to do any technical descending yourself. And then those pulley things that Petzl makes are like a prusik for a hauling system. If you want to make sled hauling on steep terrain a little bit easier. Those are my big things for that. And then of course, carrying your stuff, gear there is a thing. So depending on how long or technical your trip is, you might want to have a bigger backpack, of course. Like, do you want to deal with a regular backpack stuffed to the teeth with stuff, and it might be a little heavier, a little bit more like unyieldy maybe, or a larger backpacking backpack that has more room for stuff and you don't have to like meticulously repack things every time you go into your pack? Do you think you'll need to boot pack and carry your skis for a little bit? Maybe you need a backpack that has like the specific ski carry stuff. That's something I had to think about. And then of course, sleds, whether or not you'll need to tow a sled is a big thing on multi-day trips because sometimes you need to carry a lot of shit and gear. Sometimes you don't. But the type of sled and sled accessories you can use can make or break your trip. It's really gnarly. Using a regular hardware store sled can be risky. They can break, just sledding regularly with a hardware store sled, they can break right on the little hill. So, they're cheaper, but they might break really quick. I look into like the actual fancy sleds, like Ski Pulk is a company that makes really nice backcountry and expedition sleds. Using poles instead of ropes to attach sleds so they move in the snow better and they aren't like ramming into you while you're trying to ski down is a big thing. You can attach fins and brakes to your sleds. It's pretty nerdy. I could go into that. I should not go into that right now.
We know you can.
And then the other thing for carrying stuff in the backcountry is a snowmobile. If you're using a snowmobile, bam, so much easier. You can carry a sled with it and haul supplies. You can make multiple trips to your hut and back to haul stuff. It's just, sleds, snowmobiles.
Cool. So a lot to consider about, again, I'm going to be doing hut trips. Yeah. So we're getting close to the end of this. So I want to keep us on track because there's so much that we could talk about. And our follow-up doc is very extensive as well. But what I feel like another really good one is what's in your safety kit that you're bringing, like your first aid kit. What's in your first aid kit?
Yeah. Okay, so I take my normal med kit and then I add extras of all of the basics. So like extra NSAIDs, anti-inflammatories, meds you usually use or think you could be extra useful. More blister kits than you think you'd need. Tincture of benzoin helps the blister pad adhere to your skin better, which is helpful for touring because you're kind of like moving your feet and your boots a lot and stuff. And then some sort of emergency communication device thing. If you know you'll have your cell phone and plan on keeping your phone charged the whole time, then that'll probably work fine. But something like a Garmin InReach or an InReach Mini or one of those things are always pretty smart to have in the backcountry, especially when you're in remote terrain or out way out there where most people might not be. You might not run into other people. Having something good and backup like that is smart. And then if you're out going to ski, like the gnarly stuff, the good stuff, the risky stuff, you'll want to have more hardcore supplies in your kit, like maybe a traction device for a femur break, a pneumothorax kit for broken ribs. Could be really important if you're out in more free-ridey, risky terrain, because a heli rescue could come after you're already toast doing something like that. And that stuff can happen pretty easy, unfortunately. So if you're out and you know you're going to ski big, risky stuff, consider bringing something and knowing how to use it that could help you before a heli rescue could come.
I feel like that's the thing, is knowing how to use it, and not like I would have no business being in any situation where I would have to assist someone in that. And I think that's also part of it, is like knowing your limits in that too, which, what kind of training you have and medical training, like that's a whole other thing. But yeah, that was just something I wanted to add, that that piece of knowing how to.
And then, yeah, that's basically all I put in my first aid kit, is just like a really beefy regular one, because there's not really much else you can do. And then, of course, if you take any regular medications or whatnot, you'll want to make sure you have an ample supply, maybe an extra couple days worth, if you can, of your regular medications, like I have to. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Medications to bring. And again, on this follow-up talk, Betsy also goes into tents, pros and cons, sleeping bags, sleeping pads, and gets really into the gear piece, because there's so much in this. It's great, Betsy. Could you briefly talk to us about, you don't need to go too far into it, but about food considerations?
Food. I have over 2.5 pages in this note document about food. So if I don't get into it enough, it's all good.
Yeah,
okay.
You do not need to go into it too far, because it's a really good follow-up for people to see how you thought about, breakfast, lunch, dinner. But we can just go into it for a little bit here, and then we'll leave the last maybe 5 minutes for any questions and wrap up. So
awesome. Okay, so based on how long your trip is, you can of course gauge how much food you'll need. It's kind of a duh sort of thing, of course. If you don't have the time but have the money, who does? But if you do, you can buy every food item you will need in freeze-dried, dehydrated, pre-packaged individual bags, like backpacking meals and those cute little individual stuff you can buy at the grocery stores, that whole thing. To save money and prevent extra garbage though, maybe save some weight, I recommend buying backpacking dinners and snacks in that way, and then making most of what you'll need at home. So buying backpacking dinners, and as like the individually packed things, like what you get from REI and whatnot. And then like some snacks, like bars and stuff, you can make at home, but some of them are just so much more calorie-licious if you just buy them in their little individually wrapped wrappers and stuff. And then I make breakfast, lunch, and then some snacks at home, and that saves on time and food waste and stuff. Fat, carbs, complex carbs, calories, protein, fiber, and some sugar are your besties during your multi-day trip. None of that woo-woo dieting stuff. You want the carbs, you want the fat. Ignore all that Jenny Craig, whatever. We don't need it. We never needed it anyway. We need insulation. We need power. And then the deal with fruit. Dehydrated fruits lose their vitamin goodness when they're dehydrated. So they're better They're lighter weight, but don't have as much goodness in them. Coffee versus tea. This is a big one. Coffee can take longer and use more like devices, I guess, to make in the mornings. Instant coffee can also taste bad and have less caffeine. But what is it? Four Sigmatic, that brand makes like instant coffee with mushroom stuff in it, which actually doesn't suck as a backcountry coffee. But to get the most caffeine and the most lightest weight and the most compostable thing, Zest tea is the most caffeinated, lightweight, backcountry caffeine drink you will find. It's amazing. It's in the notes. I converted Adam to Zest tea from Coffee Girl. Anyways, combining ingredients. You can find different ingredients that are convenient and tasty and will save time and weight that work together with each other. So like if you mixed so a lot of seeds have a lot of good fat and stuff. If you mix those, you can like put them into different meals at different times, depending on the meal. You can mix different seasonings that work for different meals that really help with the backcountry meals. And some seasonings have nutritional value. Mixing certain seed mixes and stuff into your breakfast beforehand. I'm trying to go fast. Oh my goodness. The bulk section at your local grocery store or co-op is fucking amazing. It's your best friend. They will have all the dehydrated, random trail type snacks and ingredients and foods you could freaking think of, depending on the store. Some stores even have dehydrated soups, and that's pretty nice. Those can be really helpful and calorie-licious, like the, black bean and lentil soups, things of that nature. And then the best, most convenient, most amazing breakfast hack I've found for multi-day backcountry trips is making your own oatmeal, like gruel slop, like a Franken oatmeal sort of thing. You just make it. It's edible. I see your face there, Evan.
What's in it? Tell us.
So like instant oatmeal, you can add some muesli maybe, hemp and chia seeds, crushed up nuts. Always crush your nuts before you go out. Saves weight, saves space. You can add more nuts, crush your nuts. And then like powdered peanut butter, powdered coconut milk. Those are great backcountry hacks. Maybe protein powder, maple sugar for taste and extra maple goodness. And that'll get you, 800 to over 1,000 calories in just like making a weird Franken oatmeal. And that's amazing. I have an example of a really basic recipe in the notes as well. Lunches. Oh my goodness, I cannot handle this. There's so much to talk about. Hot drinks.
You don't have to cover everything.
No. Okay. Lunches, hot drinks, jerky, beef, nuts, dried fruit, sometimes dehydrated soups, hot cocoa, hot vanilla, if you're into that. And then of course, dinner, dehydrated backpacking meals that you can melt snow to make. And those are pretty dang easy, and you can add stuff into them to make them more palatable, which is helpful.
You did great. There's so much that you could go into with food. There's so much you could go into with all of this, but our hope with this was to just sort of talk about, what multi-day trips can look like. I will say I'm definitely still in the hut trip exploration part of all of this. I'm curious to know other people in the group. If you have other questions, put them in the chat, but also who's kind of in the, I'm going to try out a hut trip, or I want to know more and figure out maybe planning my own Traverse winter camping trip.
I'd love to do a hut trip someday. That sounds really swanky.
Yeah, you could bring literally everything, Betsy.
Right? Card games, board games.
Betsy, yeah, there's a couple questions. Do you prefer using a sled or a heavier backpack?
Ooh. So I have adaptive athlete things going on. I have a fused spine and a demyelinating nerve disease. So if my backpack is too heavy, it causes problems. So if I'd rather just use a backpack if I can, because it's a lot smoother. You don't have to like deal with having like a giant thing following you all the time. But I like sled sometimes because your back isn't getting crushed and you get to like, I don't know, it feels more adventurous, almost like you're going out there with like your little train of stuff. I don't know. It can be more fun, but it also can be a pain in the butt depending on the type of terrain you're in. If you're going up and down a lot of steep stuff, maybe just dealing with the shitty heavy backpack is the way to go. The sled on the downhill, you can have a brake flap that kind of just flaps in the back and kind of like helps stop the sled a little bit. And you use like PVC pipes or some sort of pole thing instead of ropes to connect the sled to you. So it's always behind you at a certain distance and never like creeps up on your skis or anything. There's a lot of 10 pages of them. They're good. They're good stuff.
Yes, really good notes, more into the specifics on equipment.
How to set up camp, there's
food, real into the food. But this recording will also be posted in the clubhouse. Yes, Betsy has great stoke and she's awesome. Oh, yeah, Betsy, just a question from a friend of a friend. Do you bring whiskey?
You know, sometimes liquid stoke and liquid motivation and liquid sleep help can be good. Sometimes liquid warmth is also helpful, but sometimes it can impact performance and athlete capability. So I guess that depends on if you want to carry that weight and if you want to maybe feel a little iffy the next day.
So also maybe hut trip if you're bringing booze.
Yes.
Because you have a
hut trips are great for that kind of party, and I tell you a lot.
Well, thank you so much, Betsy. You have so much amazing info, and I'm excited to be able to share that follow-up document and this recording in the clubhouse. And then as well on that document, we have some resources about the mapping. We're going to share pictures of Betsy's route. And then, oh, Betsy, also, I mean, I'm sure you're going to be later, like sharing how it goes. Where could people follow up on that and see how your trip goes?
Oh, Nelly, I am trying to do Instagram, and I have an Instagram account. I have a dorky website that I will be posting things on. Should be posting things on.
We can put that on the phone.
And then we'll be making a fantastically dorky little ski film about it afterwards and writing a trip report too. So that might be helpful beta actually for planning trips for next winter or something even. But yeah,
we'll definitely post about that. We'll post about that in the clubhouse too, I'm sure. Cool. Thank you everybody for coming. This is a really fun final workshop to have, and really appreciative of TREW and Coalition, and thank you, Betsy. This was really awesome. Jess, is there anything else you want to say about the season? Last of Backcountry Beta? We'll be back next year. So.
Yeah, we best be back next year. No, thank you, Betsy. This was so fun. I'm so like stoked to look at the notes and maybe plan something if I get brave.
Yeah, me too. Cool. Well, this recording will be up in the clubhouse along with the notes, and I will be in the clubhouse. That's where you can find me. Yeah, and I think we have everyone's first and last name. I think I took note too. It's a small group here. So I appreciate you all for coming, and we'll see you in the clubhouse.
Thanks so much. Goodbye.
Thank you, Betsy.
Thanks, Betsy. Bye.
Oh, thank you too.